expert conflict negotiator tactics, brought to you by CONFLICTish, and we are in for another content reactions on in this particular topic, conflict mitigation. So, with that being said, welcome back to the It Be What It Be podcast, hosted by yours truly. And what it is that we have for you here today is on the basis of a YouTube channel that I have been looking into recently as well, very much so this year. And it has to do essentially with, as I was saying, conflict mitigation. So before I go into that, take a look see at the It Be What It Be podcast YouTube channel. We were able to get another subscriber, so I'm pretty astonished and well, pretty happy for that. And as you can see, we're live with the current episode. And so I'm going to just try to jump into it a bit sooner. Of course, you can see the channel by all means, and you can also see some of the different links. I had done a live stream last week, and I'm just trying to get more into the swing of just getting back into doing live streams kind of in a new schedule. Happened to be employed at this point when I once wasn't. So I did manage to find a job in 2025. So for what that's worth, how's about that? However, as I was saying, we just want to jump into it pretty quickly into this live stream. So as you can see the different links. Going to be trying to work on getting some shorts in here as well. But for the time being, we have this YouTube channel called CONFLICTish. It's a bit of conflict, you know. It's kind of it's
some of the worst advice.
And so this guy, Ryan Dunlop, he's a conflict strategist. And so that's also part of the reason as to why I named this expert conflict negotiator tactics. And what it is, from what it is that we can see at CONFLICTish, we help leaders turn conflict into their greatest competitive advantage. Subscribe for real-world battle-tested strategies that equip you to navigate high-stakes conflicts. Lead with confidence to stay in control under pressure. www.conflictish.com. Curious to see what his website is like. We'll take a really quick look at that, and then we'll get back into the content. Turn conflict into your greatest competitive advantage. Executive coach and former hostage negotiator Ryan Dunlop helps leaders solve problems with confidence, build trust, and influence outcomes under pressure. Now, one area that I certainly will disagree with him on is that I think that his content is not only useful for leaders, and there's quite a bit over here that I think is pretty interesting. So let's face it, we're all full of ish, as you can imagine. And I agree wholeheartedly. Ish being, if he's talking about it in terms of SHIT, in which case I think it's a very interesting take on his brand and his name, ish. Because imagine saying conflict, well, you know. So with that being said, I'm trying to navigate
Some of the worst advice.
here. But with that being said, I actually had a number of different videos that I had saved into a playlist. So I really want to try to just get into some of this faster than I usually do. And so as a byproduct of that, then I am going to, oops. There we go. And let's see here.
Most people are terrible.
Yes. So let's see what it is that we have here in the very first video.
Most people are terrible communicators. That's the bad news. I think of it this way. Conversations are like potlucks. Much of what we put out doesn't taste nearly as good when it's in someone else's mouth. Just because we like our cooking doesn't mean anyone else will.
So I definitely like what it is that he's talking about in terms of most people are terrible communicators, and I certainly would agree with that. I definitely think that there's a lot more room for people to be more articulate in general, but even beyond that, that there's so much more to communication that I think a number of people definitely overlook. And a lot of people, when it comes to the interaction of different ideas, they talk to win instead of trying to either seek the truth or trying to come to a consensus or trying to be collaborative instead of cooperative. And that's where I think the this is actually very apropos in terms of the ooh that changed. Ooh, okay. I'm wondering if okay, so maybe I'm having something else going on over here. Now this is okay. Hang on. There we go. Okay, just I suppose I just clicked around in the wrong area, so apologies for that. But it is going to be this one over here. So I'm going to share this tab instead, and I'm going to show this one off to you all. So the conflict resolution matrix. And with that being said, in the conflict resolution matrix, what it is that you're going to notice is that there is a series of, and I've talked about this before, different quadrants. And in these different quadrants, you're going to be noticing they have animals associated with it. But I think that what's just the most important is how it is saying that there's the importance of the goal and the importance of the relationship. And when you're competing, when essentially the goal is more important than the relationship, and so you're sacrificing the relationship for the goal. And I think that this is, I mean, of course not every model is 100% accurate, and I like this one a lot better realistically as well. I wonder in terms of the managing conflict. So there you have it. You can, okay, well, that opened it up in another tab, but that's okay, you can still see it anyways. But nonetheless, what it is that I'm trying to get at, in fact, maybe I can, no, that doesn't quite help in terms of zooming in. But nonetheless, what it is that I really like about this is I think that it does really acknowledge a lot of the different ways that people can communicate. And so this whole notion of competing, and this says assertiveness, the degree to which one is attempting to satisfy one's own concern towards satisfying the other party's concern, essentially. This idea of the assertiveness, the idea of the importance of the goal, another, the cooperativeness, the other assertiveness, is a few different ways of saying it, right? And yeah, I just think that that is the way that a lot of people tend to communicate. And with the interaction of different ideas, there's a lot of I'm right, you're wrong kind of energy and attitude. And I don't like it, right? I don't think that that's good. Not at all, by all means. So, with that being said, let's take it back to this ish, right? And so,
We have to decide if we're serving ourselves in conversations or if we're preparing a table for others. I was reading some research this morning, and it suggests that 36% of people globally are emotionally intelligent. And that's important because emotional intelligence is the foundation of effective communication. Self awareness, self management, social awareness, and relationship management. That's what communication is all about. But many people don't have it. And it's
so let's just take it even just on that. Share this tab instead. See, I'm trying to add more to the value so that it's not just, looking at what other people are saying, but also adding some more onto that. So emotional intelligence. Doing a bit more of a deep dive, right? So emotional intelligence. And generally, what I will say to you right now about what it is that I'm aware of in terms of emotional intelligence is that it is knowing and understanding your own feelings and then knowing and understanding the feelings of other people. And there's a lot, like I could have an entire live stream on emotional intelligence, so I'm not going to try to go too much into this experience, but being the ability to understand and manage your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. That being said, all I just will say is that it's the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to release stress, communicate effectively, emphasize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. Interesting. But at the same time, to an extent, someone else's emotions are just not my responsibility, essentially. And to an extent, it's if I'm in this situation where effectively I'm going to be like walking on eggshells with somebody else, right? Like that's not really something that I want to be able to navigate. I think that some people don't have the emotional capacity or the bandwidth to be able to have certain conversations or to be able to even resolve conflict. Or some people, it's like they just interpret there to be some sort of conflict or challenge or fight if there is a disagreement inherently. And I think that that's absolutely ridiculous in that regard. I think that some people escalate way too much. I think that some people don't have the ability to resolve conflict, which we'll get into later in this live stream. So I don't necessarily think that managing someone else's emotions is 100% the responsibility of the individual, especially because, and I actually got this from Stoicism, so I guess shout out to Ryan Holiday. Nobody else can really offend you. I want to see if I can really find that. See if I can find that. Yeah, so let's take a quick look at this because this is also a YouTube short as well. And it's essentially, yeah, no one can make you angry and you're complicit in taking offense. So let's see what we have here.
No one can make you angry. They can't make you upset. No one can make you feel anything. That's a choice that you make. You're responsible for your own emotions. Epictetus says, if you find yourself offended, realize that you are complicit in taking offense. It takes two to tango. But also, as the Stoics say, things don't upset us. We choose to be upset about them. It's our opinions that are to blame, not the objective situation. No one can make you angry.
Yeah. So, no one can really get into your head. No one can really make you do something. So, looking at this description, yeah, this is from pretty recent, less than a year. So, I swear I've heard him say content like this before, but I'm just going to get off this page just for the sake of the copyright. But there's that one. And then you're complicit in taking offense. So, yeah, December 13th and October 20th. I like these. I wonder if there is. Yeah. So here we go. So let's see what he has to say.
If you're offended, it's your fault. Epictetus says you are complicit in taking offense. The remark was objective. The thing just was. And then you decided that it hurt you. You decided you were harmed by it. It's not actually true. Another person can't hurt you. You are complicit in taking offense. If you're offended, it's your fault.
With that, I agree to it to an extent because someone can make a disrespectful comment towards you. That being said, you also just don't have to take offense to it. You can dismiss it or what have you if you want. Stoics believe that if you find yourself offended, it's because you are complicit in taking offense. You're actively choosing to interpret the situation negatively. Epictetus famously said, if you find yourself offended, realize that you are complicit in taking offense. In taking offense, it takes two to tango. So, yeah, and all of this, the idea is that our emotions are internal states, and while external factors trigger them, they don't cause them. So, some of that, yes, I do think that there is certainly responsibility on the person communicating, which goes back to conflict-ish, but nonetheless, there's definitely a lot more here, right? So, that being said, let's go back to this ish. I like saying
It's
that.
why they mistake bluntness for honesty and wordiness for clarity. It's why they react instead of respond. They speak without listening. This is how people communicate when they are not emotionally intelligent. The good news is that communication can be refined. Listening, speaking, rapport building, problem solving, it can all get better. Consider the analogy. Many people assume that because they can make some chili, they can cook. Just like we assume that because we can
So I like that. That certainly there's a lot more to, and let's do this. Certainly there is a lot more to the communication, the emotional intelligence about just because you're blunt and you're like you think that that's honesty or what have you, and so on and so forth. So or that anybody thinks that because they can make chili that they can cook, but to an extent, to what do other people think about that? And so I just think that what it is that I really want to be able to take away from here, and what it is the message that I'd like to pass on effectively is that I would essentially just be encouraging people to try to do what it is that you can to try to communicate in a way that's going to mitigate conflict, but that's not always going to be possible. And sometimes there has to be boundaries with the different people. Sometimes someone just has to walk away because the other person doesn't want to not, they're not prepared or in a position to not resolve the conflict. But nonetheless.
Talk that we can communicate well. But great communication isn't like a potluck. It's more like a 5-course meal. It's refined. It takes effort and preparation. You can't just throw it together. You have to practice it, and you have to implement what you learn daily. Now, the more you do that, I'm confident the better at it you'll become. So stick around here, and I'll do my part to help you become a better communicator. One.
So I'm just going to give that one a like. And yeah, that just because anybody can cook, they think that they can, that anybody thinks that they can, just because anybody can make chili, they think that they can cook. And then therefore, just because anybody talk, they think that they can communicate. So certainly there's a lot more to it. And I already extrapolated some on that. So I'm actually just going to load up the next video. And of course, that's going to be going into an ad because I don't have YouTube Premium.
Can I offer some
And
clarity between,
just see if I can go back
you
here. And
know,
I managed to skip the ad in a way. So let's see what it is that he has to say. So you know what? Tell me. Tell me.
words have consequences. Words elicit strong emotions. Strong emotions fuel strong beliefs. Strong beliefs spawn radical ideologies, and radical ideologies drive extreme behavior. That chain reaction can be traced back to a sentence, a phrase, or a word spoken in anger or in haste. And the problem for some of us is that we don't know our words are problematic until after we've said them.
So generally speaking, yeah, that like words can express strong beliefs that can all the way lead to radical behavior. It has a lot to do with the ad fatum to Destiny, which I showed before, not Destiny the YouTuber, like Destiny as in like your fate ad fatum, that your thoughts can turn into your words can turn into your beliefs can turn into your actions, and your actions can turn into your destiny, and it essentially just escalated like that. Unfortunately, that YouTube channel is no longer around, and I think that is, in a way, I actually do really blame myself for taking so long to make some of the content that I would have liked to in relation to that YouTube channel. So unfortunately, it's no longer around. But nonetheless, yeah, absolutely, words matter, and words can really help color the direction of conflict, and the direction that a conversation or that a conflict can go in. It can escalate or de-escalate. So
Because we don't think before we speak. Hindsight makes us fluent in the wisdom we should have obtained with foresight. So the damage is often done before our awareness of it catches up to us. That's the complexity of language. We shoot for truth, honesty, or resolution, but sometimes we pull the trigger on our mouths before we aim our words. So instead of hitting the truth, we hit insult, offense, or argument.
yeah. So essentially, where you basically realize the impact of what it is that you would have said after you said it, and so you hit insult, conflict, or argument. Let me just hear one more time.
So instead of hitting the truth, we hit insult, offense, or argument.
Insult, offense, or argument instead of hitting the truth. And so that just goes back to conflict resolution matrix, which I think is just a very, very interesting. Like literally, we're talking about conflict resolution. And so when I think about that one, conflict resolution matrix, I just think that it is just very, 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 very apropos in terms of what it is that I'm just trying to address over here. Like, I'd love for there to be collaboration, but I think that one of the parts that really sucks is that if someone's collaborating or compromising or even accommodating and someone else is competing, you automatically lose. That's kind of like a game theory kind of scenario, of like, yeah, if two different people are operating, then like what happens? Like you automatically lose, even though you probably could have won. But then at the same time, I don't think that the point of communicating is conflict. That's not really what it is that I'm trying to promote with this channel. So it's unfortunate that it does happen. I know that I'm capable of it. I've even like just offended somebody just for being essentially myself, or in other words, just for making comments without necessarily thinking that they would really offend someone. Like if someone's coming half an hour, 45 minutes early to work, then I'd be all like, "Oh wow, like I'm surprised to see that you're here so early." And that person just wouldn't really have an idea of how to handle that type of question. They'd get offended at me, and then there's like a fight or flight, or freeze or fawn, right? And sometimes some people would freeze and they just wouldn't like they'd like almost like ignore it, or they would fight, but then it would be about trying to be passive aggressive towards me in other ways, so that then that is their way of like showing that they don't like me and trying to get revenge against me, that they're trying to like essentially look at other areas of how I act or my character or what have you that they don't like, or that is lower on the social hierarchy, that they could try to underline or put a magnifying glass and make a joke about it, while in an effort to attack or disrespect me, while also it being plausibly deniable. So it's not like so explicitly done where they have then the ability to hide behind it was a joke, so that then they don't actually take the accountability or like the explicit responsibility. They are able to attack me without it being explicit, and so therefore then they dodge any accountability for that, because they're being petty towards me because they didn't like what it is that I would have asked them, that I was even asking them. And like, if they're so offended by what it is that I said by to them when I wasn't even trying to offend them, I wonder how offended and how upset they would be when I if I were to actually try to attack them, so yeah, I'm trying to get my face straight, but anywho. So with that being said, so going back to this ish.
In conflict, the stakes of speech are high. Every word can heal or harm, and yet we speak with astonishing carelessness. We confuse catharsis with clarity, and we'll say things that make us feel better, but don't actually put us in a better position.
Just on that right there, it's as if like if you're mad and then you feel better because you were able to like come after that person, get your revenge, and like attack that person. But then in terms of like putting you in a better position, it's like then you may then like ruin that relationship, and depending on what that relationship is and with whom, then that can put you in a worse position, because then it's like you're in a intimate relationship, you have like girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever it is that you may do, and as a byproduct of that, then like you just destroy the relationship, or with your friend, or you get fired at work, or so on and so forth. That being said, I do think that there does come a point where if you're taking a bunch of ish, it's almost necessary for you to stand up for yourself, because then otherwise you become like a shell of yourself at that point. Like, how much ish can you actually take? And I know Dr. Orion Taraban talks about like most hills are not worth DIEing on. However, at the same time, it does get to a point where like enough is enough. Like, don't take or tolerate the disrespect, right? So
But if you don't discipline your speech will discipline your life. You've heard me say this before. Words matter, but they aren't all that matter. Like the message matters, but so does the messenger and the delivery of the messenger. That said, if you're going to say anything, choose your words well, especially intention, because what you say may live on far longer than you intend.
yeah, and I'm totally here for that. So another piece of another model that I'm going to bring up is the now I got this one from Dr. Orion Taraban, and so what it is that it is the interpersonal effectiveness model. And so this one, I cannot remember which like women it's actually from. It's from a particular woman, and I am unfortunately okay, I don't want to take too long, so I'm just going to just let that one go. But the interpersonal effectiveness model. And so what it is over here, I think it actually just said yes, okay, I got it. I got it. So it is came from a psychologist. Come on, come on. It came from a psychologist by the name of Marsha Linehan's efforts to find a treatment for, well, I'm just not going to say that word on YouTube. It is YouTube. So then there's a bunch of all of this that I don't actually, well, I'm sure I do care about it, but not for the purpose of what it is that I'm trying to communicate over here and display. So I am really, really, really getting dogged here at the moment. I'm really, really getting dogged. Okay, here we go. Finally. So the interpersonal effectiveness model, and essentially that there's objective effectiveness, connection effectiveness, and there's self-respect effectiveness. And what it is that I'm trying to highlight over here, again, I got it from Dr. Ryan Turban, who got it from psychologist Marsha Linehan, and it's that if you have something, if you have a goal such as, let me rephrase, sorry, let me go back. It is generally possible to have one at the expense of the other two, and it's generally not really possible to have all three. So objective effectiveness can look like, right? Here we go. There we go. Objective effectiveness can look like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get what I want. I don't care if you hate me, and I don't care how low I have to go or how deep into the mud I have to go to get what it is that I want to do, what I want. I don't care if I have to lie, cheat, steal, and kill. I don't care if I have to beg or grovel or completely humiliate myself. I'm going to get what I want, right? Let's do it this way, right? Then you have the connection effectiveness. So, what that one would look like is, I want to do whatever it is that you want. I want to just make you happy. I don't care if I get what I want, and I don't care if I have to lose my self respect for it. I just want to make sure that you're happy so that then we can just maintain this relationship. Right. And then the next one is the self respect, which is, I don't care if I don't get what I want, and I don't care if you hate me. I'm holding this line on principle. Yeah, just it's just trying to do the best that I can in terms of this camera setup, but nonetheless. So yeah, like I said, that's from Dr. Ryan Taraban. But nonetheless, and who got it from Marsha Linehan. But nonetheless, I think that that is just very relevant also in relation to, right? In relation to Thomas Kilman's conflict management grid, in relation to what we're talking about with this ish. And okay, I have a hack to be able to avoid. So can I offer, let's see what it, can you offer it? Yes, tell me. Oh, and yikes.
You
I
know,
actually didn't in the playlist. I didn't like, now you're gonna be able to see what my playlist looks like, but regardless, whatever.
can I offer some clarity between rudeness and directness? Because I think some people are confused on this. Too often, we treat rudeness as if it exists in absolute terms. So something is either rude or it isn't. It actually operates on a Likert scale, not a binary switch. Right. So on one end, you have rudeness, which is abrasive, dismissive, and contemptuous. And then all the way over here, you have placation, which is overly soft, avoidant, and insincere.
Right? So I like that a lot. There's rudeness and placation because direct doesn't necessarily mean harsh. Direct isn't rude. Some people think that direct is intrinsically intertwined with being rude, that there's brutal honesty, that honesty and brutality are are intrinsically intertwined. Honesty and kindness are mutually exclusive. Honesty and niceness are mutually exclusive. Don't be honest, be nice. but that is the more emotionally considerate way to operate. I hardcore disagree. I've talked about toxic compassion a multitude of times, from Chris Williamson, right? Toxic compassion. Here we go. Me taking a look at another, and here we go. And let me see it. Yep, toxic compassion. Yeah, let's say meaning. Let's say that. I wonder if they have. Interesting. So someone has a response to it. Yeah, toxic compassion. Yep. So let's do this, and we could take a look at this because the X account from 1 year ago. Maybe it's probably more than a year ago at this rate. But toxic. Oh, whoopsie daisy. My apologies. Toxic compassion is the prioritization of short-term emotional comfort over long-term outcomes. And there's a lot that he says over here, so I'm just not going to go into all of it, but I've already talked about it before. Chris Williamson X. Right? December 4th, 2023. So, yeah, there we go. Like, yeah, he's been at it for a while, and I'm trying to start and I'm trying to build a following. So, we'll see what it is that I can do about that. But that being said, so we've talked about that. So, I think let's go back to this ish. I really love saying that.
Decency sits in the middle. It's where honesty is paired with consideration. Not too harsh, not too soft. There's balance. It delivers truth in a way that doesn't distort reality, but also doesn't destroy people.
And I think that that's very important, Don't distort reality, but also don't destroy people, because honesty without kindness is brutality, and kindness without honesty is manipulation. I didn't come up with that one. I got that from someone else that I know, but nonetheless.
Right. So yes, rude way. For some, can I offer some clarity between rudeness? It really operates on a Likert scale, not a binary switch. Right. So on one end you have rudeness, which is abrasive, dismissive, and contemptuous. And then all the way over here you have placation, which is overly soft, avoidant, and insincere.
Overly soft, avoidant, and insincere, but abrasive and contemptuous. Yeah, contemptuous. That, yeah, like you just kind of like have the hate the person, essentially. So yeah, like there's just a lot there that I just wanted to reinforce, and this I think that that's even worth just really being mindful of, but nonetheless.
That doesn't distort reality, but also doesn't destroy people. Right. So, yes, rudeness is subjective, but it is not entirely arbitrary. There are some clear differences we can observe. Rudeness is indifferent to impact. So, even when clarity could have been achieved with less harm, rudeness adds insult to injury. Directness
Yeah. One more time. What was that?
could have been achieved with less harm. Rudeness is indifferent to impact. So, even when clarity could have been achieved with less harm, rudeness adds insult to injury. Direct.
Yeah, so it's about being concerned with how what it is that you're doing lands, right? That like you actually do care about like the outcome and how other people may or may not feel as a byproduct of what it is that you're doing, right? But to an extent, like again, it's like I cared about how it landed. I try to say it as soft as possible, but it's like if I say anything at all, you just don't like it, then it's like, well, whoop-de-doo in a way. So, nonetheless.
Directness prioritizes clarity over comfort. So, it's not too harsh and it's not too soft. Now, in order to do this, two things must happen. Direct communicators must recognize that their words can be perceived as rude, and therefore they must measure their mouths. The truth can hurt, but the truth teller should not. Now, listeners must recognize that discomfort is not disrespect. And if the truth hurts, that does not mean that the speaker was being rude. You have to lower your resistance. If we fail to make this distinction, we risk creating a culture where truth is either too sharp to be received or too soft to be useful, and neither extreme serves us well.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly, like being careful about where it is that what it is that you're saying, but at the same time also recognizing that's something that is just necessarily like objective. And this is not necessarily meant to be harmful. This is where I'm saying, hey man, like, you're starting to drink like, every day. Hey man, like you're failing a class, for example. Hey man, if you keep on doing this technique in the gym, you're gonna get hurt. Hey man, the way that you're cooking this food, like you're it's undercooking, like you're gonna get hurt, you're gonna get some, like, it is, there's a compassion in there, as opposed to, oh, just do whatever you want to do in the kitchen and eat it and don't worry about getting sick. Don't, like, drink as much as you want, as often as you want, and don't worry about liver poisoning or DIEing the way that Donald Trump's a brother DIE'd his oldest brother. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about you failing that class. You know what I'm saying? Like, so on and so forth, all of it, right? So I just really think that it's important to be mindful of that. So that being said, let's go back to this ish. Hey man, this is the stream I'm doing, So this is how this is my hack. Let's go to the
You
next
can't be
video, and then
nasty.
yeah, there we go.
You
The
don't
hack.
have to like people to treat them decently. But too many people think that respect is something you only give to people you like. But you don't have to like someone to be civil. You don't have to be friends to be friendly. You don't have to approve of someone to treat them with basic human decency. Life will put you in rooms with people you don't enjoy. You'll work with them, negotiate with them, and sometimes even depend on them.
And absolutely, you don't have to like someone in order to treat them well, or to be amicable, to be pleasant, what have you. You don't necessarily have to engage with the person either. But I think that there's way too many people who would just have this notion of, if I don't like you, then I'm not going to respect you. You don't, well, you don't you don't have to respect someone, but you don't have to disrespect them either. So, say for example, if I see someone and they they had a particular weight class, I don't necessarily need to admire their physique, but at the same time, I don't need to be all like, ha ha, you fat, so ha ha. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be all like up in their face about it and what have you. And yet, too many people, as far as I'm concerned, way too many people are like that, and I think that that's extremely unfortunate. But nonetheless,
And if your ability to be considerate and composed is tied to your personal feelings, then you're not in control. Your emotions are. Because I'm going to tell you, I don't like many people I meet. I don't like their character. Our views don't align. They would never be in my inner circle. And you know what? Many people don't like me either. But we don't have to like each other to be likable. I can
right? Like, if you are treating people based off the way that you feel around them or about them, your feelings are in control. And some people would say that that's just normal, and I would agree. But then they would also tend to say that what's normal is infallible. That normal is also good. Normal is almost like the way that it should be. Like, just act like a normal person and what have you. Just do what's normal. And I think that that is absolutely ridiculous. I do not think that normal is unassailable. In fact, I would argue that there's a lot of normal behaviors that are very very ishy. SHITTY, extremely, absolutely ridiculous, such as I was saying, like flight, freeze, or fight, right? So, to we're saying, most people are terrible communicators. So that's normal by definition in terms of how widespread it is. And then you're a bad communicator, you're a terrible communicator, right? Most people don't go to the gym. Most people don't do, and so the list just keeps on going on and on and on and on about what it be that most people don't be. But it be what it be. It's the name of the podcast. You know what I'm saying? But anywho, I always love to shove that in there at some point. So, with what it be, let's go back to this ish.
still present myself as approachable, relatable. We don't have to like each other to be likable. I can still present myself as approachable, relatable, and trustworthy, not for them, but for me. Because listen, our reputation will outlast every temporary annoyance. And how we
I just don't necessarily agree with that one, like, not for them, but for me. I do think that the kindness and the niceness, dare I say niceness, because niceness also can mean that someone is a doormat, doesn't have a backbone, and means that even if they're not treated well, that they're just afraid of standing up for themselves, so they're gonna try to keep the peace and what have you. Sure. But I'm still gonna say it anyways. Because especially, you know what? I actually wonder. Ay caramba, man. Something going on with my ish. Now, so niceness can be pleasant, satisfactory, agreeable, right? Pleasant manner, good natured, kind, fine or subtle, right? And even like, what is the definition of a nice person? Pleasant to be around and has good manners. A nice person is cheerful and well mannered and says friendly things to others. Sometimes the word nice also used more generally to say that someone is harmless or average. Yeah, more general. Yeah, polite, kind. So yeah. So like, there's a number of different ways. But so all I'm just whoa, oopsie daisy. I need to get better at that. Yeah. So pleasant, agreeable, satisfactory, as you can see there. Fine, subtle, pleasant in manner, good natured, kind. That the word nice typically means a person is pleasant to be around and has good manners. A nice person is cheerful and well mannered and says friendly things to others. Sometimes the word nice is also used more generally to say that someone is harmless or average. And the meaning of nice is polite. The meaning of nice is polite, kind, how to use nice in a sentence, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So yeah, I need to get better at that ish. But speaking of which, you know what? The next time I'm going to do conflict ish again. But while I do have him here, I'm going to say that I want to go back to this ish, right?
we handle difficult people speaks volumes about our character, not theirs. Maturity is your ability to separate personal preference from personal.
And so yeah, so this whole idea, I definitely do think that being nice is a gift to somebody else in a way. Like, we don't owe it to them. But I also like, I don't think it's only just about like being nice is strategy essentially, and just about being able to manage your reputation. I don't think that that's the only reason to be nice to someone. I definitely do think that there is that karma and spreading that good energy and what have you. So long as also, of course, you're not being a doormat, because it does get to an extent. And that's where, to some extent, you do have to compete. To some extent, you do have to go for that self-respect, effectiveness, even if you may not necessarily get what you want, and you're going to be in a worse position. So because you can't really keep all relationships. Sometimes you do have to just walk away. Sometimes people are just not prepared to be able to handle the conflict or to resolve conflict. Some people never will, right?
Conduct. It means understanding that kindness isn't a favor, it is a strategy, not to manipulate,
So I disagree. Not 100%, but nonetheless.
but to navigate. When difficulty comes, your character is not determined by how you feel about someone, it will be determined by how you treat them.
Most of us will never be tested with thirst.
Conflict resolution and conflict management are not average skills. You can't be nasty.
So in that sense, yeah, the whole thing about its strategy, don't quite completely agree, but nonetheless, let's see the next video. You can't be what? You can't be what? Tell me. You can't be nasty?
And needy. You don't get to mistreat people and then expect there to be no consequences. It's natural for people to protect themselves from people who try to hurt them. See, decency is the price you pay for access. Access to help, access to support, access to consideration. If you're going to have a bad attitude or mishandle your words and mistreat people, then you better be ready to handle life on your own. Most folks aren't signing up to help somebody who hurts them.
So just on that, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. You can't be nice and needy. You can't really hurt other people and then expect them to be there for you when you need help, um, among other factors. So absolutely.
Like, how are you bold enough to be reckless with your conduct, but then soft enough to expect support? Make that make sense. You can't bruise your fist on my chin and then ask me for the band-aid. That's not how this works. That's not how life works. So you got to choose. Either be measured with your mouth, careful with your character, and considerate with your actions, or
Right? Be measured with your mouth, measured with your actions, and considerate of your character. And I really like that. You don't get to hit me in the mouth, bruise your fist on my chin, and then expect me to give you the band-aid. That's not how this works. That's not how life works. I like it.
be ornery and walk alone. Like, if you're out here burning bridges, don't act surprised when nobody shows up with a boat. Favor flows where honor goes. So treat people with consideration, or they might treat you the way you treat them. Conflict resolution and
So definitely, that's like kind of just coming at people like with somewhat of a vengeance. And I totally, people like wanting to take revenge on you. That's like the fight kind of aspect now, or people would just like walk away, the flight and what have you. I definitely do think that walking away, like I am trying out in the present day, you know, millennial man in the 30s. I'm trying to walk away more so than fight back unless I absolutely have to, because there are going to be some situations where I just do have to stand up for myself. And I do think that there is like speaking up for your what it is that you may need in a relationship, because the other person's not necessarily just going to do that for you. Right. And I can't really just expect the other person just to be perfect, or to like hope that the other person is going to be the one to be able to like let me know or advocate for my needs. I kind of have to, or my wants and desires. I have to do it on my own in a way, So with that being said, I just think that that's just very important to be able to be mindful of. But in any case, yeah, I'm really trying to play with the camera here. But in any case, so now we're getting on to, and yeah, I'm just gonna like this video, why some people will never resolve conflict.
conflict resolution and conflict management are not average skills. They are not cognitive abilities that we can all just automatically deploy at a high level. Beyond basic problem solving, conflict resolution and conflict management are higher thinking cognitive processes that require mastery of several multifaceted skills. It's more than a skill, actually. It's a group of skills that we have to strategically weave together in order for it all to work together as a competency. So it requires clear communication, effective listening, and the ability to reason, sure, but it also requires accurate
So clear communication,
effective listening, and the ability to reason.
effective listening, and the ability to reason. Absolutely, but he's gonna now list out a number of different skills, so and a number of different intelligence eye, if you will.
Sure, but it also requires accurate interpretation, ideation, negotiation, self actualization, and socialization. At any given time, whether you recognize it or not, you will actively draw insights from social sciences, disciplines like psychology, sociology, anthropology, even human ecology. Conflict requires emotional intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, linguistic intelligence, social intelligence, and interpersonal intelligence. My point is this, guys, everyone can't do this.
So yeah, it absolutely is a skill. Thing is that, so I've even heard like Mark Manson talk about like this is about, one of the differences is the maturity, essentially, and the maturity of these people who are more capable of being able to facilitate conflict in this way. However, not necessarily everybody has that maturity. And one of the parts that I really think is very unfortunate about this, and this is another one of those, it's normal, but I think that that's so horrible. That goes back to most people are terrible communicators, right? And so what it is that I'm trying to get at is that I think that there is a lot of problems with this, essentially, and that there's a lot of people who would not really praise this skill. They wouldn't really praise the skill. They want to retaliate if they feel attacked, or they want to like walk away or just ghost or what have you at the slightest indication of discomfort. They don't want to like they're not emotionally available to want to try to talk through what might be happening with them. And just like that, and I'll try to do this better this time, define emotionally available, right? Let's take a look, see. Right? So define emotionally available. So not this ish, not just yet, but emotionally available means being open, present, and fully engaged in a relationship, able to share feelings, listen actively, and create a sense of safety and trust. So share feelings, listen actively. It's about being willing to connect on a deeper level, allowing oneself to be vulnerable. Emotionally available individuals can build meaningful and lasting connections. You have to be open, you have to be vulnerable. Right? You have to have emotional regulation. You can manage your own emotions in a healthy way without being overwhelmed or shutting down. Right? Emotionally unavailable individuals, on the other hand, may struggle with expressing emotions, connecting deeply, or building trust in relationships. They may be guarded, avoidant, or have difficulty being present with others. Right? That you're the person that's actually the emotionally available one. I even see if I can figure this one out on Instagram. Because I think that if I can find her, yes. So I found her. Now I just want to know. So, okay, let's take you with me, right? So, it's my therapy tribe, and she's a woman on Instagram who talks a lot, mainly to other women, frankly, but I just don't think that what she has to say is only for other women. She's a licensed therapist, and when emotional maturity is a new vibe, when you take a deep breath instead of clapping back, when you unfollow and don't explain, which I'm not always for. Leave quietly, don't complain, don't explain. I'm not always for that, because I do think that there ought to be an effort that's put into conflict resolution and to be available for that. When you feel the guilt but set the boundary anyway, when that's just how they are, stops being an excuse for disrespect. When you realize not everything needs closure, some things need distance, sure. When you don't try to fix how they feel about you, when silence is your answer because arguing would cost you your peace. So I appreciate that. I'm not going to read the excerpt for the sake of time. I do want to move on. And let's see here. When you're tempted, oh, okay. So you know what? I will actually give her, because I use that in my content. So I will give her a like here, yep. And then there's also the when you're tempted to clap back, remember this. Their opinion doesn't change your truth. Some people don't want clarity, they want chaos. Silence isn't weakness, it's maturity, restraint, and self respect. You're allowed to grow which, like, I don't always think silence isn't a weakness. I don't always think that. Sometimes you have to speak up for yourself, you have to advocate and defend yourself. Um, you're allowed to outgrow the need to prove yourself. Your energy is sacred. Spend it wisely. Peace feels better than being right. Protecting your peace is more important than proving your point. I think also some of that depends. It's really situationally dependent. I just think that sometimes you really do need to advocate and stand up for yourself. And you really need to tell some people to F off. You really just need to. And there's just one more, protecting your peace and all that. There's one more. I'm not so sure if I'm able to find it. I'm not going to be looking for too long, but maybe if because I'm in my healing era, and I know that I had that one too. But nonetheless, I am. What I was looking for was it's about being emotionally available, essentially. So I don't quite see it, so I might just I'll do a quick search. Available. Yeah, I don't quite see it. It be what it be. It be what it be. You get the idea. So let's go back to this ish.
That's the thing. When someone says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't have the grace for that. I don't have the empathy for that. Believe them. Like when we
And I've made the big mistake of just not believing people when they tell me, like, to an extent, who they are. Not believing them when they say, I don't have the grace for that. I don't have the empathy for that. I don't care. I was like, what the hell? Like, really? Like, what do you mean that you don't care? Like, surely you're not actually really like that. And maybe if I showed you compassion, then that would be different for you. But nah, if anything, they just called me stupid for effectively. It's as if like I didn't hear them, as if I didn't have ears that worked. So you know what? Okay. If you don't care, you don't care. You know, like if you don't have the grace for that, you don't have the compassion for that, you don't have the patience for it, you don't have the temperament for it, you don't have the ability, the willingness, so on and so forth, then so be it. Fine. All right.
Casually throw around words like narcissism or trauma. Those individuals are going to struggle with conflict management and conflict resolution. Look, I've got 3 core beliefs that drive everything I do as a conflict strategist. The second one is that you cannot resolve conflict with people who are unreasonable, irrational, or not ready. And you know what? A lot of people fit into that category. And this is why those of us who excel at this should lead by example, not condemnation.
So you cannot resolve conflict with people who are unreasonable, irrational, or not ready. Most people fall into that category, and conflict resolution like this and it is a skill. So some people will never be able to do it, and I do think that it is a skill that can be learned for people, but it is certainly a skill. And so what it is that I'm effectively saying is that some people are going to be better at it than others, and as a byproduct of that, so I do think that it's better. There is like first place isn't normal, exceptional isn't normal, right? So I definitely do think that this is better.
So, what do you do if the person you're in conflict with doesn't want to receive the words you have to say and they're not ready to bury the hatchet with you? Should you attempt to force the resolution process? Well, the answer is no. Not only no, but you can't. You can't control what other people do in the conflict resolution process. This is a common mistake that I see a lot of people make, right? We're too focused on what the other person does. Well, what if the person says this or what if they do that? Your ability to resolve conflict is not contingent on someone else's ability.
Yeah, so basically, if someone is it takes two to tango. And if they don't want to tango with you, if they don't want to solve it, as Dr. Allison Keller Aguirre was saying, I almost said McGuire, like Lindsay McGuire, but that one about right over here, when if you're tempted to clap back, right? That some people don't want clarity, they want chaos. Some people they just don't want to they don't want to yes, okay, I didn't actually like it apparently not. That's weird. Thought I did, but no. They don't actually care. They just want to be able to do whatever it is that they want to do. They're not actually trying to like understand you or anything like that. So there's so much there, but nonetheless, so if they're not ready, they're unreasonable, they're too irrational, this is not going to work.
To participate in the process. And here's why. I know that sounds off, but hear me out. Conflict resolution is actually a 3-part process. At any given time, you are trying to resolve a problem, reconcile a relationship, and restore yourself. You can walk away from conflict satisfying 1, 2, or all 3 of those things, right? So not every
So to resolve a problem, reconcile the relationship, and to show up for yourself. He said with an R as
conflict
well.
satisfying, reconcile a relationship, and process. At any given time, you are trying to resolve a problem, reconcile a relationship, and restore yourself.
And restore yourself, yeah. Resolve a problem, reconcile a relationship, and restore yourself, right? So those are the 3 that like, yeah, you resolve the problem, try to like reconcile the relationship, but maybe restore yourself. Maybe you have to have your self-respect in there. Maybe you can get the self-respect, maybe you can get all 3: self-respect, effectiveness with objective effectiveness. The objective being that you want to resolve the relationship. You also want to stand up for yourself as well and what it is that you want and what have you. And you want the connection effectiveness, but maybe you can't. Right?
You can walk away from conflict satisfying 1, 2, or all 3 of those things, right? So not every conflict can be resolved. You're not going to be able to solve every problem. You're not always going to be able to reconcile relationships because people might not be willing to meet you halfway to do that. But even if those two things can't happen, you should be able to walk away from conflict fully restored, meaning you said the things that you needed to say, you did the things that you needed to do, and you left it all on the table. And whether or not
And I agree with that. And I think that there's a certain level of that's where it's like you do have to stand up for yourself. You do have to an extent, have that self-respect effectiveness because you were able to say what it is that you wanted to say. Some people don't want to meet you halfway. Some people, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. You're wrong. And depending on how aggressive or toxic or entitled some of these people are, then they may want to make it so that you agree with them as well. And I have a video for you afterward, just on that one as well. It's going to be the last one in this series, so we're at the hour mark, so I'm trying not to make this too much over an hour. But I wanted to also add some more meat and potatoes to this dinner, effectively. So that being said,
that other person wants to walk away from the conflict in partnership with you or in a separate direction, that other person, you did the things that you needed to do and you left it all on the table. And whether or not that other person wants to walk away from the conflict in partnership with you or in a separate direction has no bearing on your ability to be good when the process is complete. So even if you can't control the outcome of the conflict, and even if you can't restore a relationship, you should always make sure that you can work on being good in and of yourself. That's what we mean by putting down conflict residue, walking away from conflict, focus on the future instead of what's behind you.
so there you have it. I'm just going to give that one a like as well, and that, yeah. Yes, at least you're able to restore yourself. You said what it is that you needed to say. I totally agree with that, as I've been saying. And so let's get on to this last video that I have prepared for us today.
This delectable Knorr ramen recipe will put an end to your drive-through.
Have you ever had a conversation with someone who is always right or self-righteous? Some self-righteous people don't just believe they're right, they need you to know it too. Like their certainty often borders on arrogance and narcissism, leaving very little room for alternative viewpoints or possibilities. Now, other times, self-righteousness is a mask for deep securities like feelings of worthlessness, low self-esteem. So virtue signaling and constant counterarguments become the way those people seek validation.
Yeah. So you see, like, they always need to be right. Some of them, they need you to believe that they are right as well. So it's bordering on arrogance and narcissism in terms of there's no room for alternative viewpoints. And so then at that point, it's like basically nigh impossible to be able to really resolve conflict with these people because they don't want to meet you halfway, right?
Well, either virtue signal ask for deep securities like feelings of worthlessness, low self-esteem. So virtue signaling and constant counterarguments become the way those people seek validation.
Yeah, virtue signaling, low self-esteem is like, are you compensating for something? Are you just particularly sensitive or what have you? Not necessarily, you just really, you're like, oh, like if I'm wrong, then you attacked me or what have you.
Well, either way, when we encounter self-righteousness, our natural instinct may be to challenge it or expose the hypocrisy in it, right? But this only escalates conflict because the more we push back, the more they resist.
Yeah, and I've even heard Mark Manson say, and I can bring it up in a totally different video, that essentially there seems to be a number of studies that would indicate that and this actually from Mark Manson's Solved podcast also, and his first episode on values, which I completed, but nonetheless, that on that podcast, essentially it was this situation of, right, that people may have a particular value, and if you are trying to highlight the contradictions and the inconsistencies and logic in someone's values, that actually makes them more rigid in their values. It's like you attacked me and you attacked my tribe, because a lot of people, they, if anything, most people, they arrive at their positions through identity or tribe. So it's as if you attack me or you attack the tribe. It's not as if, oh, thank you for bringing me closer to the truth. In fact, anything, I'm going to make you my trusted advisor. Essentially, it doesn't really work like that for people, which I think is ridiculous. That makes me misanthropic. I am optimistic that it doesn't have to be that way, but it does make me quite misanthropic. It's normal, and I think that it is really unfortunate and very much so getting in the way. Like when I think about having a cultural impact, this YouTube video and this channel is ideally the cultural impact, and I hope that this can go somewhere, because I think that it can be just very unfortunate if it doesn't. But nonetheless, and to an extent, it's like, well, you know what? I'm just going to do what Mel Robbins says. Let them.
So, what could you do differently? Well, I like to use Socratic questioning. Instead of confronting people, I ask questions like, hey, that's an interesting perspective. How did you come to that conclusion? No sarcasm. See, this approach creates a mirror. Through strategic questions, they're compelled to confront gaps or contradictions in their own reasoning. See, I've learned that anyone can argue, but not everyone can make an argument.
So I actually disagree with that. I think that one, the Socratic method doesn't work if people are if they are if they don't respect you intellectually, then it just kind of becomes, this is obvious, and then I'm teaching you. Like, I'm right, you're wrong, so I'm teaching you, or I'm right, you don't know, so I'm teaching you. It's not like, why do I actually think what it is that I think? And it's not like I'm doing introspection. It becomes more of a lesson. Or some people are just, they recognize that, and they're so full of ish that they essentially just lie to, and they're willing to lie in the construction of their argument in order to double down on the ish and the bullish, the bollocks that they are purporting. Very unfortunate.
And when they realize this, they're faced with a choice. They can either double down on their error or reevaluate their stance.
And they do double down on their error more often than I'm proud to admit, and I think that that's absolutely abysmal.
Now, you guys have heard me say it before. I love intellectual discourse, but I make no time for a fool. That's why I don't call people out. I call them up. Stand up. Take the microphone. Defend your position. I will listen deeply.
And they double down on their error.
Sometimes the best way to deal with a self-righteous person isn't to correct them. It's to help them self-correct.
If they
Try
even
a
want
little
to.
less.
If they even want to, isn't to correct themselves. If they even want to, or as I'm saying, then I'm teaching you. You
Have you
don't
ever had a
know, I
conversation?
know, and so therefore I'm teaching you. So I liked all of those videos. There's definitely more content, but at this point, that is where it is that I am going to leave it. So been an hour and 10 minutes or so. I also try to throw in some other creators in there, but this was mainly byproduct of CONFLICTish. So thank you once again for showing up on the It Be What It Be podcast once again. And what it is that you can look forward to from here, at the very least, next week. I would like to this Friday to be able to have another video coming up, but if anything, next week as well. We are going to be wrapping up this live stream over here. And as I'm saying, there's some of these other links. I want to be able to get some more of the other shorter videos going on and so on and so forth. But for the time being, even though I may not be happy with all of what happens in life, even though I can be very misanthropic while trying to be optimistic as well, it be what it be. It's the name of the podcast. Like and subscribe for more.